Good evening, this is Robert Sidell. I welcome you to the Gateway Show on live 6 to 7 p.m. every Sunday night on the number one talk station here in Las Vegas. And it's a great pleasure. The show is designed to bring you inspiration in one way or another. And tonight is not going to disappoint you on that. I've got Sharelle Mendenhall. And is that how you pronounce it, Mendenhall? I thought I
Yeah,
think
you're
it.
correct.
Yeah, it's funny because I was growing up, our family was close friends to a family called the Mendenhalls in Southern California. So I don't know if it's a common name or not. I just don't know. But but in any event, I got to hear for people that are the background a little bit. Well, let me first I'll say one thing about myself. Okay, my name is Robert Sidell. In case anybody hasn't been listening, and I'm an ordained minister for over 40 years. I'm an ordained lawyer for over 48 years, whatever that means. It's a new term. I just made it up. I'm an ordained lawyer, but I've been practicing law for 48 years now, which is a long time, believe me. But I've learned a lot, believe me. So I haven't wasted my time. That's for sure.
Mhm.
So tonight I'm really thrilled and truly, genuinely excited to be interviewing Sharelle Mendenhall. Is it Sharelle or Cheryl?
Sharelle,
It
you
is
had it right.
Sharelle. Okay. I got to hear Sharelle this week at a Christian business group I attend, and I don't know. I was good. That's why I didn't talk about this with you beforehand. It was very powerful experience. By the way, hello Elizabeth. I can see people on Facebook saying hi, so I just so nice to
Oh,
say hi.
awesome.
But this was a really powerful experience for me, and it came exactly at the right time for me. Actually, it was
Mm,
powerful enough. It was a little scary for me, to be honest with you,
mm.
and I'll explain to you why in a second. But
Okay.
so Sharelle, uh, first of all, we have this group I go to usually about once a month, and we do have speakers that usually are Christian or Christian background or something. But Sharelle really has has a deep faith in a way that I don't encounter super often. I mean, listen, there are lots of people that have a lot of faith, so I don't even want to say that either exactly. But the way you express it, maybe I should put it that way, Sharelle. But whatever it was, we suddenly had, instead of a luncheon, we had um, as you called it, we almost had an altar call, right? That's true, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. We did.
And we've never really had that experience there before, and so it was. And it was in the part that scared me a little bit was
Mm.
because you talked about what was the term you used to describe yourself? Well, actually, you know what? Maybe I'm getting this out of order a little bit. Maybe I should let you discuss who you are a little bit more. Now that I've set this foundation a little bit,
No,
um,
I love it. I just love a conversation. And so it was the crazy ones was
yeah,
the
the crazy
term.
ones, right?
The crazy ones, yeah. And that was the term. And it was just funny because, for me, like when I get an opportunity to speak, I don't just want to go in there haphazardly or with, what I think I should speak about. I actually go in there very intentionally and just really pray about it. And as someone who's an ordained minister, you understand. And as like I'm praying about what specifically I need to be speaking on at CBN, with a bunch of business owners. And I had a bunch of notes, just preparing like normal. And then the night before, as I'm going to bed, I was already asleep. And then I get woke up with one line and it said the crazy ones. And it
So
was
I'm
when
going
I
to
was,
ask you a question about that. The reason
yes,
why I'm asking
yeah,
you this is that. So have you used that term before?
never.
Oh, because I sometimes tell friends that I've got crazy faith.
That's awesome. And
It's
it
fun.
is. And it takes a crazy faith. It does take a crazy faith for a lot of things.
Well, it just depends how big the miracles are you want to create. You
Yeah,
know,
absolutely.
I mean,
Abs-
most faith ultimately is a kind of craziness to the logical mind.
Right.
The idea that you could have, I was just to give you a couple little examples, but I really still also don't want the idea that your accounts could be filled when they seem to be empty. That seems crazy, right? The
Right.
idea that it could rain when there's no clouds, that seems crazy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, all the things that really Christianity is based on, or, is based kind of on craziness to the human logical brain.
Right.
And so I've often said to people, the whole thing about the spiritual journey is the willingness to take a leap beyond the logical mind into the infinite, eternal presence of God.
Absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
that can be scary because
Yes.
you are leaping beyond what you think is normal logical stuff. And
Right.
so you had this experience You got
Hmm.
woken up in something about the crazy ones. And
Yeah.
so then I keep telling us about what happened then.
So as I was laying there, and mind you, I was just so exhausted. I've been just running like crazy. I've been nonstop. And so I literally fell asleep on the couch before I even made it upstairs. And so I had laid back down and then I get woke up with the crazy ones. And it was as I was praying about what to speak on still. I was like, okay, I have all these notes. What topic am I supposed to run with? And I got the crazy ones. And I was like, okay, all right. I'll remember that when I wake up, like I was gonna, because I wake up
Right.
early and I was like, I'll have tons of time to prepare. And I just felt like the Holy Spirit was just prompting me, no, there's more. I need you to start taking notes. So I wake up and I start taking notes and I start reading the Bible. And what instantaneously started coming to mind is in history, is you go in the Bible and you look at Noah. And Noah is obedient to God. And he starts building this ark, and everyone around him is calling him crazy. So they're making fun of him, calling us, but because of his faith, he ended up saving him and his entire family. And then you fast forward to another hero in the Bible, which was one of the crazy ones as I was writing the list. And it was a Caleb and a Joshua. Out of an entire, dozen of people, only two actually looked into the city, looked into the promised land, and was just enamored with how amazing this promised land was that God was going to give them. And everybody else was like, there's giants in the land. They're freaking out. Where Caleb and Joshua believed God at his word and his promise. And so, they were another two crazy ones. And then I get to Gideon. And Gideon, he was already afraid from the beginning. He was like second guessing. Are you sure you want me? Are you sure I'm the least of these? Just really second guessing. But, he ended up going out there with 300. Like it was just so powerful, with not swords, not thousands. And even though he was afraid, he still did it. And he was one of the crazy ones. And again, another one more, biblical reference was Esther. And Esther for me is really special because I am, a pageant queen. But before that, my dad growing up would always tell me, hey, read Esther, read Esther. And it was annoying. I didn't want to, but that story really impacted my life because it's not this topical, beautiful pageant queen that I see that a lot of people portray Esther as. She saved her entire people group by putting her life on the line. And she did conceal what her identity was for quite a while. And a lot of people don't really delve into what she went through, what she endured, how she was scared. She's like, no, 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 send this back to Mordecai. And then he responds and he said, who knows that you were brought to the kingdom for such a time as this? And if it doesn't come from you, help is going to come from somewhere else. And so it was just this really pivotal moment where she was obedient to not just to God, but actually someone who was a mentor, her mentor in her life. And she ended up saving an entire people group, which is so powerful to me. And then you have the modern days, the Abraham Lincolns, Sam Waltons, the Vera Wangs, and you can go Colonel Sanders, of all these people who changed culture, changed the world, that were above 50. Not one of them that, I mentioned, of the, current modern day was less than 50 years old. And it just really wrecked me. And I was like, okay, God, like too many people want to count themselves out. Too many people want to say, I did my thing. I've ran the race. And he's like, no, I have plans. I have things, missions for these individuals to do in the 50 plus category. It's for every category, but it was just really powerful. So
So,
that's kind of the long and short of the crazy ones.
yeah, and I want to still talk a little bit more about what you said, but I want to a couple different things I want to, but I do want to say for anybody tuning in. So you are actually, um, well, your title right now is Mrs. United States, right?
Correct.
And that's, it's funny. I've learned a little bit about this whole title world, pageant world, I should say. And it's
Yeah.
actually, there's a lot more to it that meets the eye, isn't there?
Yes.
And there's something you're reminding me of something. There's a lot of things you said to me that were very sobering and kind of humbling to me. Well, totally humbling. I mean, you could talk about to whatever extent you want or not, but I know you were trying to decide if you wanted to go ahead with this, and apparently, and you can just tell me if you want to talk about it or not. But you have a son that was injured badly, right?
Yes,
And
a
I don't,
bonus son. Yeah.
yeah, um, and so you could have easily decided at that moment you couldn't go forward with the pageant, right?
Right.
And didn't he say something to you like, "Mom, you always taught us not to give up," or something like that?
So that was of his own volition, just on his own journey of what he was doing. So while he was laying in the hospital bed and he was being interviewed by all these different, reporters and things along those lines, because I kind of put his story out on TikTok, and so he got a lot of just press with it. And his response in the interview was never give up. And he's a 15-year-old kid who got in a snowboarding accident. He severed his spine when he hit a tree, and he was now a paraplegic and he couldn't feel from the chest down. And that was what was sobering for me, was because I was going to give up. I had written in my journal with God that I was going to win a state and a national title. And a statistic that most people don't know is, prestigious pageants, it is more likely for your child to be in the MLB, to be in the NBA, to be, in the NFL than they are to win a prestigious state title, let alone a national title. And
So you
so it was,
had written this vision out, but then,
yes.
and actually, you know what? I'm just looking at the time. We're going to have to go to a break, but you and I can keep talking. So people on Facebook will be able to still keep hearing us. So for those of you
Okay.
listening on the radio, I'm listening to. I mean, I'm interviewing Sharelle Mendenhall, and I'm really, like I said, just I'm right back to the same place I was when I was hearing her on Thursday. Very excited about it. So anybody listening, I'm promising you this will be a life-changing experience if you're open to it. But anyway, so we're going to go to a break, and you and I can keep talking, Sherelle. But we'll be back in just a minute for those of you on the radio.
You're pretty good at this. You've got 10 things going on.
I know it's kind of funny, isn't it? Okay, I can hear. Now they went to the radio. I could hear it in the background. Okay, I know it's kind of funny. It's oh, Adam Mendenhall just posted something. Is that your son?
Husband.
Oh, your husband. Oh, okay,
Yeah.
great, 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 great. Um, so So your son,
Yeah.
ironically, it's funny. We have some very close friends whose son also experienced that exact same injury, and
Mm,
is also. I don't know where your son's at in that journey right now, but this other guy, it's got to be about 10 years now ago that he had this
wow.
injury. And I just had a nice conversation with him literally about a month or two ago, and we were talking about it. I said, "Well, this is what I said to him was, which a lot of people I'm sure say, and it was meant with a good spirit, of course, and he took it the right way. I said, well, if you ever had to have this kind of injury, this is probably a good time in the world to have it. But I said, the other side, and he goes, yeah, a lot of people say that to me, but, and he was kind about it. He said, but so far, it still hasn't really changed the outcome yet, you know,
Yeah.
and that's what they're all hoping for, right? And we're all praying for, right?
Right. Absolutely. Always praying for a miracle in any situation. And, he's 16 and he just made the uh wheelchair basketball team. He just made the golf team because he has what's called a verticat, and he can it stands him up so that he can play golf. But it's inspirational to say in the least.
You know, that's what I'm saying. And that's sort of like this other young gentleman. And I, by the way, if I had to make a prediction, I think somebody's going to get it figured out how to put this back together again. That's my prediction.
Mhm.
Who Joshua Baskin just put this in off. He's a friend of yours, and I says miracles exist, anything is possible, and it's true. It's I mean, let's face it, a lot of technology today. I mean, I'll tell you just a funny, but still almost a silly example. I have had to have cataract surgery a couple of years ago, about 4 years ago now, and so I've got the artificial lenses in my eyes. And what's interesting is I see better than I ever saw. I don't need any kind of glasses,
Wow.
close or distance. And that would have been a complete what? What are you talking about? 50 or
Yeah.
100 years ago, right? So,
Yeah.
my guess is something like that will come along
You're right.
for these people. I see that coming, especially with the bursts of AI and all that. But I also recognize that in the short run, for anybody, they still have to live with where they're at, right? And I don't
Yeah.
want to, never want to trivialize that at all. Um, but I'm also like to keep open. I have a dear friend of mine that's got a fairly advanced case of Parkinson's disease, and he and I went to. I've known him since elementary school, and he was actually one of the top people at San Diego Zoo for many years. And it's another one of those stories, that people
Yeah.
at the moment there doesn't seem to be any good cure for that. Oh, okay, I'm about to come back on. I'll be back on in just a second.
All right.
So this is Robert Sidell, and I'm really thrilled here and having a lot of fun interviewing Sharelle Mendenhall, Mrs. United States. I like that. Sounds good. I mean, no, I mean it does sound pretty neat. I mean, it really does. But it's because it really means something important. But there's so much so much different powerful things in what you've already said, even in the first few minutes that we've talked. So one is before you came to speak to our group Thursday night, something woke you up in the middle of the night and says the crazy ones, and then suddenly you started writing out a whole, giving some historical examples out of the Bible and other places where people have done. By the way, that's a theme of my book. I don't think you've even seen my book, but this is one version of it anyway. But
Oh,
I,
that's beautiful.
I have a whole section in there about stuff that people said in the world was impossible that's now
Yeah.
normal. I have one whole
Yeah.
chapter on that, about 10 common
Yeah.
examples. And so I have a underlying operating axiom and principle in my life is if people say something's impossible, there's a good chance it's going to be possible.
Yeah.
It may not be tomorrow, but you should always be open to that idea anyway. And
Right.
so because we live in that kind of world, it's just everything. We were all flying around on these airplanes, right? And 100 years ago, that wasn't possible.
Yeah.
My dad was born in 1913. When he was born, there was no such thing as any kind of scheduled aviation at all. Period. There
Yeah.
just wasn't. He saw Lindbergh flying the Spirit of St. Louis. He actually saw him flying over the fields, tipping his
That's so
wings.
powerful.
I know. Can you believe that? That's the
Yeah.
life my dad lived, and it's funny. He lived. He was a very interesting and creative person, and he set a high mark for me, high standard. But he literally when he was 92, he went to Antarctica. So he
Wow.
just kept staying active. He practiced medicine for over 60 years. So he was a
Wow.
very very unusual person. He was an airplane pilot and did all sorts of things. Almost was killed multiple times doing some bizarre things like that. And all of us, I think we've all had. I've walked through the tropical rainforest with him and had a huge snake right in front of me that if I'd stepped on it, you and I wouldn't be talking right now. And so I think we've all had a lot. Luckily, I wasn't scared at the time. I just saw this big snake, and luckily, I'll call him Brother Snake. I don't want to say it that way, but I looked at him. He looked at me. He was probably 6 or 7 feet long, this snake, in the middle of a tropical rainforest. And suddenly he stopped and I stopped. And I thought, this would probably be a good time for me to turn around and go the other direction.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I did. But if I didn't have good hearing and didn't hear him kind of hit a little twig or something and stepped on him, honestly, I was over an hour by boat from the nearest hospital. So I
Wow.
probably wouldn't be talking to you. So I think we all have a lot of stuff like that in our lives, and it's kind of amazing that any of us are even alive at all. Really, we start looking back at our lives, and but so and like I said, my dad was that kind of person too. He had a bunch of examples too. Hold on, just one second. I'm just trying to think here. Okay, so just trying to think. Are we? I think we're back on. So anyway, all I really want to say is that uh, we all are confronted with things, and then we have to be open to the miraculous possibilities. And I think that's
Yeah.
what you're highlighting for us, right? That's what you're
Yeah.
talking about, and that's what your message was to us that day. And but what was amazing, what amazes me about you, and I'd love to have you share a little bit about this. How do you have such deep faith in God? Here your son has had a very devastating injury. A lot of people might say, "Hey, God, you let me down," and you might even have some of those feelings, by the way. And no, I'm sure God would not be upset. But how do you deal with that when you're dealing with something like that? How do you keep faith? I mean, how do you keep faith in God?
So I think for me, I think one of the biggest things that is pivotal is that in growing up, I got to know Jesus, and it was a relationship. And so when you understand his promises are true, every good and perfect gift comes from him, that anything that's not good is not from him. And, Blake's story is one thing recently, but, my sister went missing, 6 years ago, and we just found her body a little over a year ago after her missing for almost 5 years. It was 13 days shy of 5 years that we got the call. And after we had searched for her body and everything, it was absolutely an answer to prayer for closure in my family, not what we wanted. But, I can keep going backwards about story after story after story of the things that I have encountered. And the way that I keep faith is staying rooted in the word and who Jesus is, because he is so faithful and he is so good. And he himself endured so much. And I know that anything that is not good is not from him. And it allows me to take whatever injustice, whatever hardship, I can take it before the throne. And I will tell you, I will be honest with him. I'll have very candid conversations with him, whether I'm sobbing, whether I'm angry. I will let him know what my true emotions are so I can lay him before the throne. I can give that as an offering. And in exchange, he gives me comfort. Sometimes he gives me understanding. Sometimes he doesn't. But the one thing I always walk away with is that he promises me that he'll never leave me or forsake me. That he says, if I pass through the waters, he will be with me. It doesn't say that we're supposed to stop. We're supposed to keep going. It means things that, come keep pelting us in our life. We're supposed to keep going. And then, on the other side, or even in the middle of it, I see miracle after miracle after miracle take place. And that's how I keep my faith, is because his goodness and his mercy is new every single day. And you can feel it. It is so tangible in every situation when you just spend time with him.
Well, and I think, yeah, and I don't, just those few words you're saying, trust me, could change anybody's life. I mean, somehow and that's kind of what I went away from that luncheon when you were speaking, thinking, okay, because I've been trying to dedicate my whole life to growing in my relationship to God too, in my own
Mhm.
unique way, right? We all do it a little bit differently, um, but I know something's occurred to me. I can go a whole level deeper, I'm
Yeah.
sure, than I have. And that's why I said it scared me a little bit yeah, I didn't even talk about the part when you asked people to come up front, but
Yeah.
and I, I'll get to that in 1 second, but I think if we really could grasp the reality of what's possible with our relationship to God, it would scare
Mm,
us, right? It would scare us,
yeah.
and it's like it's more comfortable to live in a world that we think we understand
Yeah.
than to confront that it's really a very miraculous kingdom. And is really an infinite and eternal God that knows us intimately.
100%. Yes. Yeah. And that it is a transition from ordinary to extraordinary. Because it's like there is like the ordinary Christian life, and then there's the extraordinary Christian life where we actually step out of the boat, where, like you probably in your book, you talk about that crazy faith. It takes so much more than to just trust that every single morning that the sun's going to rise because he set the sun in the sky, or the moon. You know what I mean? It takes to that next level to where he challenges you to be all that you're created to be.
I got to tell you something funny. I think I gave you this little card that says "Expect a Miracle."
Yes, yeah, 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 you did
And
expect a miracle.
it's so funny. I gave one of these. I was at the gym and I gave it to a young lady there the other day, and I said, "Life is really miraculous." She goes, "Yeah, I know what you mean. Like the fact that we are chemical beings and we're all complicated and everything." I said, "Oh, that's all true, but I'm trying to say there's something much more miraculous than that, even." And she goes, "Oh, you mean the man in the sky or something like that?" It was so funny how she put it. I said, "Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. The part that we really can't logically understand." And
Yeah.
it's all miraculous, actually. It's all true. I mean, the all you have to do is look at a baby or a human being and see, okay, this is a very sweet friend of mine named Hadassah Gold, says hi, Sharelle, and to me too. And Hadassah is very sweet. Hadassah, by the way, I'll just say this to you. Hadassah, well, I don't, she's Jewish, and I think I don't know exactly if she's Orthodox. I don't know that, but she's still, I would say she's practicing Judaism, and she's very, very sweet and holds her faith very strongly. And I always respect people that dig deeply into their faith like that. And Hadassah
Yeah.
is one of those people that I have a lot of respect for.
Well, tell her hello. Absolutely.
That's right. I'm sure she might respond in a second. And so this, interestingly enough, about my show over the years, um, I've tried to make it accessible to people, regardless where they're at in their spiritual journey. Because,
Right.
and I have to be completely honest with you. How do I know where I'm at in my spiritual journey? If you know what I'm saying, I That's why I'm very humble in my relationship to God. I basically
Yeah.
say, God, like you talked, some of these characters. Oh, my friend Hadassah says, thank you to me, and I mean that sincerely, Hadassah. Even though you and I haven't had that many conversations, I know that you are very sincere in your faith, and and listen, I love my, I love. There was a woman. I'll tell you something kind of funny. A funny story. I had a Jewish older lady, Jewish client, and she took a liking to me. And then she was trying to picture this. She was a Robinson's store clerk in Beverly Hills, if you get the picture, because
Hmm.
this goes back in time. I don't know what there would even be like now. And so she decides somehow, out of the blue, that I was her son from another lifetime, and, and so she be this very deep devotion to me. And
Mm.
so and so here she is, this Jewish person that feels so close to me. And she goes, and then she said to me something like, "Well, you're probably part Jewish or something." I mean, it's just funny in a way. But she and I became very, very, very close all the way. And then her husband passed away, and then I became very, very close to her, and then all the way up till the time she passed away. And I think so. A
Mm.
lot of times, Jewish people are comfortable, kind of what I'm sharing too. And I always want to make this available, whatever we're sharing, to anybody, regardless whatever their faith is, because I think we have to leave that in God's hands. It's kind of how I see it anyway. But hold on one second. I think we're going to have to go to a break in a second again on the radio. Oh, wait, maybe 30 seconds or something. So I just want you, so when you share all these things, it's like everything else. Some people are going to hear it on one level and some people at another level. But one thing is very clear about the Bible. God certainly uses a lot of people that maybe have some flaws, right? That are not perfect. And that's what
Yeah.
I think we all have to remember. Okay, we are going to go to a break now, but I'm going to keep talking to you, to Sharelle, and anybody who wants to listen on Facebook. We'll keep going on right now. This is Robert Sidell, and I'm interviewing Sharelle Mendenhall, Mrs. United States. I know I like it. I love it. So my friends are on the radio. We'll be back in just a minute. But for those of you on Facebook, stay with us. We'll keep going. It's this whole spiritual journey is a very humbling experience, I think. Um, you look at people that it can be very, very sincere. I mean, and even people like David from the Old Testament, King David. I mean,
Yeah.
this great spiritual teacher, but he also made some great mistakes too. And
Yeah.
without having to, I guess I don't think I'll spend the time going into that tonight. But the bottom line is, and yet God still loved him. And
Yeah.
that's one thing that's kind of unique about the Bible is that God actually talks about people's failings too.
Yeah.
And Jesus would talk to people, his own disciples, about their failings, and to me sometimes almost to the point of it being humorous. Um, oh, Hadassah says Sharelle's amazing too, along with me. So that's good. Well, I agree with you, Hadassah. She is amazing. She's a sweet young lady. Also, that's the best way I could put it. It's funny. What was the example? Oh, one of my favorite funny stories out of the Bible. I think it's a funny story. Is when you had these two. It's such a classic sort of Jewish story. You had these two disciples that were brothers going to Jesus, saying their mother wanted to know if they could sit to the left and right of Jesus in heaven.
Yep.
Now,
Yep.
if you wouldn't think this would really be in the Bible, except that it is in the Bible, and it's like you think, well, why did that get put in there? And the funny thing is that this is such a human story. It's not a Jewish story, it's just a human story. Then the other disciples start arguing and saying, well, why should they get to sit next to you in heaven? We want to sit next to you
Mhm.
in heaven. It's
Right.
just such a human kind of story. And that's why I
Yeah.
say there's stories like that to me that are part. When I hear stories like that out of the Bible, I think, yeah, there's got to be a lot of truth in all this because those were not designed to be written to suddenly make them seem so saintly, right? They were just very
Yeah.
human, weren't they, when they were saying those things?
Right. And I think what's powerful about that is it is about being real with God, no matter where you're at, no matter what you're doing. And the beautiful thing is it's his love for us that transforms us. It's like there is the process of the pruning, the changing, the repentance, but it is his love for us that draws us in and causes us to want to go deeper, to your saying, like that whole other layer. But I think that honesty is so pivotal in your relationship, that we're not pretending that we're anywhere else. It's just like, hey, no, I actually am struggling to have faith in this area, or I'm struggling to believe for this, or disappointment. There's so many different things that happen throughout our journey that, as we're honest with ourselves and with God, I believe that's when things are revealed at that next level.
Well, that's where you're unusual, in my opinion. I mean, seem to have, yeah. I mean, you're right. We all have some disappointments, and so they could be serious or minor. I mean, I had a client just recently lose her only daughter in a severe accident. Hold on just a second. We're going to come back 1 second. Come back in just a second. Good evening, my friends. This is Robert Sidell. I'm This is the Gateway Show on every Sunday night, 6 to 7 p.m. live on the number one talk station in Las Vegas. And I'm really also simulcasting on Facebook, and also it's on YouTube. So anybody wants to watch the show later, you can watch it on YouTube also. And you just type in Sidell and Gateway, and you'll find it, or Miracle Podcast, whatever. You'll get it. Type in the word Sidell and Gateway, and you'll find it. But I'll also post it on Facebook later on too. I'm really having a wonderful time talking to Sharelle Mendenhall, Mrs. United States. Yeah, you should show. Do you have your crown right there? Can you put it on for a second?
I
This should be fun.
do.
This is going to be my claim to fame here. I get to have a crowned person here on the show here. Look at this thing.
I was at a speaking engagement and they're like, "Hey, Sherelle, will you wear your crown?" I was like, "You know what? I can wear it for a short amount of time." But yes.
That looks fun. I like it. I like it. I like it. That's fun. I It's so funny. You probably don't know about this, but I had during that luncheon at the end, I had you standing on one side of me, and there was another contestant. I don't know what pageant she's from, but she was there too,
Mhm.
and I was in the middle. And we used to have a mayor here in town named Oscar Goodman, and
Yes.
his claim to fame was he always have showgirls on both sides of him. So I thought, hey, this is my new thing. I'm gonna have beauty contestants by me. No, I'm just teasing.
There you go. Yeah, Oscar and then Carolyn. Yep.
Yeah, they're very nice people. I was in a movie with Oscar, and I were in a movie together called Casino. And that was a weird quirk of fate, I'll tell you what. But somehow, if you look me up, it says Robert Sidell playing himself in the movie, which is a very strange thing. And it wasn't planned that way at all. But nonetheless, that's what they wrote in there. Isn't that funny?
That's awesome.
I was a very short part, trust me. I don't want to have any ego here in this. But I wasn't actually an extra. I was actually an actual had a player, an actual part in the movie, believe it or not. But the funny part, like I say, is my name got changed by a quirk of fate. It was actually funny. Robert De Niro says to Scorsese, the director, says, "I don't really want to call him Quincy because that seems that funny. You would care if I call him Bob or Robert, which is my real name." So,
Right.
and Scorsese says, "Sure, just call him that." So they put me down as that name. So then, when it's listed on the internet, they listed as Robert Sidell playing himself. So, but we won't get into that. But it was a fun movie for me to be in, and kind of my little tiny bit of motion picture claim to fame. And trust me, it's is a tiny bit actually. So I'm not trying to make much of it actually, but it was still a fun experience. So you wearing this crown kind of reminds me of that. It's just kind of elevating, right? It's elevating.
Right.
But what you said spiritually, I want to come back for a minute to this. This is the important thing actually. And it's true for me too. I mean, things can happen that are disappointing on one level or another. I mean,
Yeah.
we may disappoint ourselves, we may disappoint somebody else, or somebody else might disappoint us. We're
Yeah.
we're not machines, we're human beings on this earth. And I think the main thing that I'll tell you what's unusual about Christianity, and honestly, truthfully, Judaism has a lot of this in it too. So for my Jewish friends that are listening, um, the idea that, in fact, one of my good friends called me recently. It was right before, I don't know, it was one of the famous Jewish holidays, I forget, but where you're supposed to be an atonement, and they were calling me
Mhm.
and asking for atonement and things. And so there's definitely some very nice traditions in the Jewish tradition related to that.
Right.
And so, but the idea that God can accept us, even including our shortcomings, that
Right.
is a very miraculous thing. And
Hmm.
if for anybody listening out there, whoever you might be, if you're listening later on, oh, by the way, Joshua says he loves your crown. I was looking at these pictures on here. If you feel like you've made a failure, you've done something wrong, which if you haven't felt that way, you're probably not a human being, because I think we all have failed one way or another.
Yeah.
Um, then you know what, my friends, know this: that there's a God that loves you, knows that this is not an easy journey, knows that there could be difficult struggles at times, and I think that's where. um, Sharelle is a little is sort of unusual in a way, in the sense that even though you've had some very tough adversities, we didn't even really get into the story. I think you did maybe the day you were there of your sister that was disappeared, but you also you had a twin, right, when you were born,
Mhm. I
and
did,
I
yeah.
and that. I don't know how much you want to go into that. I can't really remember the exact details about it, but that was a story unto itself, wasn't it?
Yeah, it is. And I think one of the biggest things that actually kind of set me on a journey with my mom and my family and how they like spoke over my life. But when I was born, my identical twin was born inside of me. And at 5 weeks old, they had been passing me around to a bunch of different hospitals and they didn't know what was wrong. And then I finally get to the City of Hope, which is in Los Angeles. And at the City of Hope, they found that my twin had formed inside of me and that they were going to have to perform emergency surgery. And so they had to cut out a half of my liver, one of my adrenal glands, like all peel it off my spine. So everything that it was attached to had to be removed at 5 weeks old. And so because of that, it set me on this trajectory throughout my life of being sick almost all the time. My immune system, they had no idea. I would go in the hospital for just weeks at a time, and they're like, we have no idea what she has. We have her on 3 different antibiotics. One of them is working because her fever is going down. She's getting better. So they just would leave me on all these medications. And I remember it vividly. And I would have these little stuffed ducks, that were like stacking up on my windowsill because I was just there. And, the toy cart would come around and, I would get to pick a new toy because I was just there. I just would be constantly at the hospital. Um, but what was partnered with that was my mom always said that God spared your life for a reason. And I believe that every single person who's alive is alive for a reason, unto something. And God says that, I know the plans I have for you. So just for me though, like that was really powerful of having my mom speak that over me constantly. God spared your life for a reason. So I didn't just kind of sit back and wait for things to happen to me. It was a constant, okay, what can I do? How can I change? What is he have me here for? And it wasn't just to take up space.
Wasn't saying, well, and I guarantee you're not just taking up space. In fact, I know. And now I'll get to tell you the part that scared me a little bit. Is you at one part in the luncheon said, and honestly, and Robin, my friend, has led this group for a long time. Robin Joyce, who does a wonderful job with that. But he even commented, nobody's ever done this before. But you said, well, I think I want to have something kind of like an altar call or something,
Mhm.
which, and then you said something like it was more like you had a vision. God gave you this vision that if anybody came forward and felt they had a spiritual purpose, and they came forward, that God would equip them with the ability to fulfill that purpose.
Yes. Yes.
Am I getting it more or less right? I think I am.
You are. Yeah. Yeah. That's the whole package in short. So
And so myself and a lot of other people walked up front. And so the scary part for me is I thought, oh, you know, what am I now been equipped for? You know what I'm saying? And
yeah.
I have no idea, of course. But
Amen.
yeah, I have no
No,
idea.
it was really amazing because that was part of like what I was feeling in my spirit, and I wasn't fully sure like how everything was going to go, and that's part of the faith, of just like walking with the Holy Spirit. Is I just felt so deeply that in that room there was several crazy ones. There were people that just have these incredible hearts, but with incredible hearts, great business minds. Because a lot of times people can have an incredible heart, but they don't have a business mind or they don't have the ability to walk out because they don't choose to cultivate what God has called them to in their life, to be able to be excellent in their field. And whether this doctor that cures cancer, whether it's you know what I mean? Like every single thing that they could be doing. Or creating a brand new media outlet, being an ordained, a lawyer, just being able to change the face of law. There's a lot of things that can and need to be done, but like I just felt so powerfully that there was this call for the people to step out of the boat, to have faith, and to step into their full calling that God has for them. And to see the room, and I wasn't sure if one person was going to walk up or any, to be honest. And then 90% of the room, as far as I can remember, walks forward. And it was so powerful to see and to be a part of, and just to kind of do to pray over you guys for that specific thing. And like you said, to be equipped. It's like, I don't know what it is yet. I'm excited and I'm scared, but it's it's something that I like have this confident expectation, biblical hope, a confident expectation of something good.
Well, it was all I can tell you is actually I sent that morning. By the way, one of my dear friends who is actually probably listening on here right now, she often sends me a little positive message. And I sent something back and said, "Let's expect a miracle." I said, "Let's," and I called her up and said, when you send me these little messages, I actually really appreciate them. Sometimes they make a big difference to me. And I said, so just for the fun of it, when I say expect a miracle, I mean that in a real way, like something really, really
Mm,
miraculous, something very good. And so I
amen.
said, let's just be open. Today, something like that's going to happen. And then we had this at lunch. So I called her afterwards. I said, this amazing thing happened. I said, I feel like I'm walking on cloud nine. And
Woo.
that's exactly what I said to her. And so anyway, but we sort of had that seed thought in the morning. And so anyway, that was, so you being there was very powerful for me, and just gave me something I needed. That's the best way I could put it to you. And I'm sure, by the way,
Amen.
I know other
Amen.
people too, not just me. But it was a really a wonderful, wonderful experience, and it showed a lot of courage on your part, really. And that's what I pick up in you. You have a lot of courage. You know, it's scary to. That's what I'm saying. It's scary to confront that much courage, right?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think what you referenced in the Bible too is like all these people who had all these shortcomings, It's like I can just list, everything in my life of just, if you could just physically, the weak, the this, the that, you know what I mean? And he uses every single one of those pieces in order to give me courage, in order to give me boldness. Um, but also just a passion for people to meet Jesus. And, religion is one thing, but relationship is a completely different experience
On
and
that
journey.
exact note, we have to go to a break. But
Okay.
for those who will be back, and one of my good friends, I'm pretty sure will be joining us too, is a minister herself. And but we'll stay with the people on the Facebook too, the people who are listening right now. So this is Robert Sidell, my friends. Stay tuned, and I'm having a lot of fun interviewing Sharelle Mendenhall. I'm learning a lot in all sorts of ways, believe me. So anyway, we'll be back in just a moment. Stay tuned, my friends. So it's fun looking at you with this crown on. it's it's no, like I say, I by the way, how long have you been married too? I think you've been married a while. I think you told me this. I think I asked you this before.
6 years. Yeah. Going on 6 years.
Okay. Well, I'm writing a book right now on marriage. I have this one book, like I say, The Gateway, which is, actually covers some sections on marriage, but I've written a whole book on it now, and I'm just about ready to get it published. And because I really
Mm,
believe, as an attorney, believe it or not, like I've been an attorney for 48 years, I did over 1,000 divorces. So I got a chance
wow.
to interview a
Awesome.
lot of people getting divorced, and kind of learned a lot about what works and doesn't work in relationships. And by the way, I
Right.
think that's the whole point about relationships and forgiveness. We all, the miracle of God, really, regardless. Oh, one of my good friends, hey, from Washington D.C. is listening. Hey, Robert. So glad. He says, great show. Good to be here. I appreciate you tuning in, Robert. It means a lot to me. Um, you know, but all I was saying is, so if we didn't have forgiveness, I've often thought forgiveness is probably the greatest miracle invention in the human race.
Mm,
Without it,
yeah.
we'd all be trapped. You know,
Right.
and I think I'm not sure everybody is good enough. I mean, we need to practice forgiveness, not just of others, but of
Yeah.
ourselves. Of ourselves,
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
because if we don't, we'll get stuck. And that's what happens to people sometimes. And then their whole life kind of spins out of control into drugs and different things because they're trying to suppress some sort of deep guilt or whatever, you know,
Right. And
which
and
is,
and and you're right. The things that kind of come along with it is the shame. the guilt, and like that just takes over. So it's like if you don't have forgiveness of yourself, and then just kind of turn your mind around. It's like even the Bible talks about the renewing of our minds. It is so important that we are renewing our minds and that we're speaking what the word says over us and not repeating or meditating on the things that we've done wrong. Once we, put that before the throne and ask for forgiveness, then we can move on and change into, it's like, man, I don't want to do that again. I want to move. I want to change. I want to grow. And so it's powerful. Forgiveness is very powerful.
Yeah. So you know what? Like I say, this, and who knows? See, this is the fun about thing about life. I never even knew who you were until Thursday, and now we're having this
Yeah.
very close, I call life changing exchange of communication. And I am positive people will listen to this and it will change their lives. And so I'm just, it's just a wonderful thing. So we'll be coming back on in just a second. But yet the nice thing is, like I said, I'm going to send you a copy of it and I'll put it online too, the YouTube link. So if you ever want to share it with somebody, it'll be there for you too. And
Yeah, absolutely.
and it's nice to be able to just capture a moment in time. Here we are. We're coming back on right now. Good evening, my friends. This is Robert Sidell, and I'm having a wonderful time tonight uh, visiting with Sharelle Mendenhall, Mrs. United States, and she's even got her crown on right now. And it's fun. It's you can imagine meeting queens of old, with their big crowns and everything, and how that would have been kind of intimidating in some ways, And but I actually I do know not just enough about the pageantry. My daughter did a little bit of this kind of stuff at one point, and it's actually much more competitive than most people understand, like you said. And I had yeah. Anyway, it just is, and the women I've met that participate in these things have uniformly been very nice people. And interestingly
Yeah.
enough, even their fellow competitors are very, very nice people and usually very supportive. And so that's another little thing about it that's sort of unexpected, that you might not expect sometimes. But I mean, what?
Yeah, it's so true. I think one thing that I even went into pageantry, not understanding, about the sisterhood, the camaraderie, or truly how incredible the women I would meet are. And each pageant that I've done, local, state, because I've done California, Nevada, and then several national competitions. And in that, I walked away from each one just being amazed at how incredible. Like I would meet world changers, people who are so passionate about their platforms, family, changing the things that they can, and it's just inspiring because then it stops you and you're like, man, am I doing enough? Am I? And it challenges you, but also inspires you all at once to just see these beautiful, incredible individuals around you that are taking their tragedies and turning them into something powerful.
It just reminded me. Do you remember who Robert Schuller was? Oh, good. Oh, good. Hey, here's Janet. She's showing up. I'm glad. Can you see my friend Janet just came on the screen too?
I'm
Uh,
gonna slide it over so I can see her. Yes, I can
oh,
now.
Janet, I'm so
Okay.
glad you got on, Janet. I was afraid
Well, I'm
were.
in my car.
Janet is
So,
Janet is a minister too, and she's one of my dear spiritual friends. It's funny how as we go along in life, you have certain friends that are spiritual travelers along the way, right? And
Yeah.
Janet and I first
I'm
met
getting
about.
out of the car. So hold on, Bob.
Okay,
Sorry about that. But 10 minutes after I talked to you, I got called to do another wedding. So I had to jump up and go.
so Janet does weddings here in town, and she brings a very loving quality to them. Believe me,
Mm,
and just it's very sweet. She makes it very sincere, and but so Janet, she just one thing she did in my life that played a very important role for me. As my dad was getting older, he lived till 99 and a half. The last few years he couldn't drive, much to his chagrin.
I'm going to
But
put the phone down so I can get something. Okay.
okay, so but anyway, Janet actually, we were able to get her to come in and take care of my dad. Now she's not a medical
mm,
person, and so really what was nice about it is that because she's also a minister and just a nice person, um, she got to know my dad really well, and
yeah.
and he they became close friends, right? Would you put it that way, Janet?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I would say that. Let me just sit this way. I'm just gonna sit outside because, yes, we became really good friends. Is actually his birthday was a day after mine, and I think we were a lot alike in many ways.
Now here's
Yeah.
I'm gonna this is I got to tell you something that will Sharelle will be your laugh, right? I've got to give you a laugh, and your husband's gonna laugh about this too. So my dad had about a week or so left to live, and he knew he was dying, and we knew it too, and we knew it was not time to try to prolong his life, but he still could talk and communicate. So somebody came by, one of his neighbors, and we were standing on visiting with him, and Janet was there too, and the guy says, "Is there anything I can do for you?" He says, "Yeah, just get this young woman to spend the night with me."
Yeah, it was only a couple of days, less than a week. He died. He passed away, right?
Yeah, and
Yeah,
it was,
funny.
and that's that. So that you see, it made you last, Sherelle. You'll always remember that.
Yep.
Your husband's going to like that one too. Um, my dad was also a creative person who lived a very out of the box sort of life in lots of different ways, but that's why I was down in the tropical rainforests of Costa Rica with him. But but in any event, Janet, do you so she? I don't know if you had a chance. You probably didn't have a chance because you've been doing a wedding, but you'll have to listen to this recording later on. But do you want to share a couple thoughts for us? Just that some.
Well, yeah, I was going to read from, sorry, to read from the Daily Word, and because I really liked what it said today. But you're right, I missed the show because I left at about 5:30, I think it was, to drive over to the hotel chapel. So it's in quietness I am refreshed and renewed. Sometimes, especially on my busiest days, I need to be quiet, to step away for a few moments and simply be. I begin by finding a comfortable place. I feel my body relax, my breathing become regular and easy, and the busy stream of my thoughts slow as I open my mind and heart to the divine presence within me. I affirm God is here. Relaxation deepens as I focus on this simple thought. Peace, love, wisdom, and understanding fill my awareness. In this timeless moment, there is no discord. There are no concerns. There is only God within and all around me. My heart's wisdom hears the words, I am with you always. Refreshed and renewed, I return to the activities of my day. My soul is at peace and my mind is clear. Inner harmony is restored. And then from Psalm, be still and know that I am God. So this week, everybody can just stop for that moment and just know God is here.
Well, it's funny because you didn't hear the show, but that was really the same message Sherelle had, right? Sherelle, isn't that kind of your message too?
Yeah, a bit of it. Yeah. That's one, it's one of so many, it's the be still and know that I am God, partnered with the crazy faith.
Crazy faith, I know. I'll have to tell you about that part, Janet. That was
Oh,
fun.
okay.
But yeah, we're gonna be almost out of time. Actually, we could spend a minute or two more on Facebook. The radio show will be over in a second. But but yeah, you'll love listening to this recording later, Janet. And Janet, you could tell Sherelle listening to Janet that she has a very soothing kind of healing experience too, doesn't she?
Yeah.
And that's what we've all got to do. By the way, like I mentioned earlier, I have people coming to me as a personal injury attorney. Sometimes they have very severe and devastating losses. So I pray with my clients, believe it or not, every
Amen.
week, every week. And I
Let's
never put it
go.
on them. If somebody's talking about a bad loss, I'll say, "Would you like me to say a prayer?" And usually they say yes. And that's,
Right.
who
And
wouldn't want that, right?
and that's what I was kind of referencing earlier is just being able to be no matter where you are and being Jesus to these people. Because a lot of times, and I mentioned it, at CBN, but I would be on
Okay,
film
let
sets.
me say one thing. I want you to go on, but for those of you listening to the radio, God bless you. Remember, God is real, miracles are real. For that reason, the best is yet to come. We'll be back next
Yes.
Sunday. I'm going to stay with you, folks. You two, everybody, stay with us on Facebook for a couple more minutes, and we can continue on. But God bless all of you on the radio. We'll be back next week. This is Robert Sidell and Sherelle and Janet as well. So we wish you all the best. And for those of you on Facebook, just stick with us. Okay, so we can keep talking for just a little bit more. Um, So you started to say something. You just started to say something, Sharelle. What was it?
About the radio something about
Oh,
CNN.
CBN.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was just kind of sharing a bit about, when I was sharing there that while I was on film sets living in Los Angeles, opportunity after opportunity to simply be Jesus on that space. And it opened doors to be able to pray with people, to go to church with people, to have conversations that just broke open what was originally religion. And I had people find me on Facebook afterwards, and he's like, I'm the one who saw God hook you up, just by simply having like conversations that about Jesus, not leaving because so many people is like, leave politics and leave religion, just don't talk about either. And for me, it's like, man, I want to have those conversations. I want to bring Jesus to the table. And so it's like, whether it's you're a lawyer, whether you're a minister, whether you're in the drive-through, I don't care where you are. Like in that moment, we're supposed to have the crazy faith to be doing miracle signs and wonders, because that's what he's called us to do. He's called us to live this life of miracles. And that's in each one of our callings. Because I don't want to be a lawyer. I don't I don't plan on doing that ever in my life. But that's what you're called to, and you get the opportunity to pray with people that normally wouldn't get prayed for. And so many people, it's just like they leave it to the pastors. Well, guess what? The pastors do go out some, but a lot of their ministry is inside the church, and a lot of people don't walk in the church. So who's going to speak to everybody else?
Yeah, that's just something you know what, and again, I don't push on anybody at all, and I'll ask people in the very beginning, do you belong to any faith or tradition? Some people might say no, and that's fine. And some people, yes, but all the different answers people can have, and
Yeah.
but it's surprising how often people find it very, very, very comforting when they're dealing with a major loss,
Yes,
which I guess it's
absolutely.
really not surprising actually. But well, and Janet, you pray with people a lot too, don't you? In your own way, I think you do.
Yeah, and when Mercedes and I had the church, it was called A Place for Miracles, but
Mm,
she called it the Church Without Walls. I don't
I
know if
love
you
that.
knew that, Bob, but she called it the Church Without Walls.
That's beautiful. I love that.
Yeah.
Well, you know what, Janet and I were reflecting on something this week. None of us know how long we get to be on this earth. And
Yeah.
so, what we want to do is, if we feel any of these kind of feelings inside of us, we want to share them as much as we can
Yeah.
in appropriate ways, right? or inappropriate if you feel guided. I mean, you have to go your own, you have to follow your own truth. But, no, I'm just having fun looking at you with this crown on. You know, you should be holding a crucifix or something. No, I'm just teasing. But you remind me of the pictures of the queens and things when they would be having back during when the Europeans were coming to this country, they would come and anyway, I don't know why I had a little vision of that looking at you talking like that. But the bottom line is we each were going to do it our own way, and Janet has her own sort of gentle, soft, loving way of doing things, right, Janet? I mean, that's one way of describing it, I guess. A little bit
Well,
crazy, a
true.
little crazy too, though, right?
Sometimes. That's true. Sometimes it is.
um,
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, my friend Hadassah is saying, thank you for the amazing show. God bless both of us. She needs to sign off. Hadassah, thanks so much. One of these days you ought to call me. We'll visit again a little bit more. Um, I love the fact that people of different faiths can feel comfortable listening to the show. And we have to, I think, eventually trust God to work that part out. But
Mhm.
the bottom line is, uh, both of you, or well, I'll start out for a second with you, Sharelle, saying on Joshua Baskin. Is that a friend of yours, Sharelle?
Yeah.
Joshua? Oh, okay.
Hmm.
Yeah, he said amazing show. Well, Joshua, I just want you to know, I appreciate your comments. Um, the beauty of this is that we'll be preserved, and it will make a difference to people. And
Yeah.
so, Sharelle, I want you to know you truly um, changed my life this week in a lot of different ways. And Janet changes my life every week in her own unique way. It's funny. She's very loving and lives her truth. I think you
No,
walk the talk, right, Janet? You live the truth. It's what your story is.
no, yeah, that's true about me. Yeah. I'm sure it upsets people sometimes.
But most of the time it doesn't. I think you have a way of communicating that doesn't threaten people. So
Yeah, no,
most
that's
of the,
true. But sometimes I do think people are put off when you're adamant about your beliefs sometimes.
yeah, well,
But I just feel like that they're not supposed to maybe be in my life right now or something. I'm okay with it, in other words. Yeah. I
Well,
just bless it.
somehow I think
Hmm.
Sharelle, you would probably agree with that. Um,
Yeah.
well, I just want you to know, it's seldom I am so blessed to have these two beautiful women on show online anyway. But you each make a big difference to me, and Sharelle, you've made a huge difference to me. Who knows where the future will lead? But I just want you to know. And you don't do you live here in Vegas, Sharelle? I
I
don't
do,
even.
yes.
Oh, you do live here now. I guess I didn't even realize that. I wasn't sure. Well, but anyway, then, yeah, no, that's good. We'll visit a little bit after on the phone too. But um, so anyway, everybody that's listening on Facebook, we want to thank you for joining our show, and it's been a fun time. And Sherelle's really shared a lot of her faith and her inspiration with people, and as Janet shares her own faith every week too. And we have a dear friend named Ernie, who's usually here too, but he took off this week with his wife to go to Mexico. But he's almost 80 years old now, and he's originally born in India, and he was brought here because he was raised in a Christian school. So it's kind of a neat story too. But so he's almost always with us too. So we're kind of this team, right, Janet? We kind of try to send out a
Mhm.
blessing to people.
Yeah, I think he's on his spring break
Yeah,
because
Oh, that's wonderful.
he teaches school. Yeah.
Oh, nice. That's
Yeah.
wonderful.
yeah. Here he is,
Yeah.
79,
No,
still
thank you
teaching
guys so
school.
much for including me.
So yeah, let me just say this to you. May God
Uh,
bless you, Sherelle. Watch over you, protect you and your family. May everybody who's listening to this, Janet, anybody who happens to be listening, may the Holy Spirit, the power of God, reach out and bless everybody wherever you might be. And may this be the beginning of the most miraculous days of our lives. They're so good that if we look back today, we'll say, how did it get so good? And wouldn't that be a problem to
Amen.
have? Hey, how did our lives get so good? Let's be open to that possibility.
Amen.
All right. So God bless.
amen.
God bless you
I
both.
love your crown, by the way. I just
Thank you. Thank you. It
So
gives me a headache after a while, though. So,
Oh, I'm sure it does. Yeah, yeah.
so
well, I would love to connect offline. It was a pleasure to meet you. And thank you for the interview, Robert. It was a pleasure to meet you at CBN. And I'm looking forward to what we do in Las Vegas together.
All right. God bless. We'll be in touch, all of you. And to everybody else listening, God bless you all too. Until we meet
Bye.
again.
Good night.
Good night. Bye bye.
Yep, bye.